Hello, Jeff Olson again. This is my third video that we will be doing. Happy to be with you. Once again, I am building my channel, so I would appreciate it if you can just click that little like icon and subscribe. It would really help me out. Learning a lot about YouTube that I didn't know before, but it's great. It's great so far. Got a lot of good emails, a few comments. It's been great. Hopefully these are helpful. Very cathartic for me, I want you to know. The book that I mentioned last week is kind of something I did for my own therapy. That book is entitled um, A Journey in Mental Illness. If you want to look at for that on Amazon. Um, and I'll put a link to it in the comments here. Speaking of books, I get asked a lot about, how did I deal with this while I was going through it? And I did a lot of reading, and I'll be mentioning different books as time goes on, but there's one that I want to mention right now. It is called Wait, A Love Letter for Those in Despair. And the author is a gentleman by the name of Quang Lu. That's Cuonglu. And this is, it's not really a book that's focusing on mental illness. It's more about you getting in touch with yourself, dealing with hard things. And this is something, again, that helped me out quite a bit. So I will put a link to this and a mention about this particular book in the comments after I finish our discussion tonight. So the next things I want to cover tonight, and I'll try not to make it as long. I know these videos have been going around a half hour, and I know that's kind of a lot. So I'm going to try and be a little more succinct this time. But I got thinking about, what would be the next valuable thing to talk about. And so this one is more going to focus on, so what do you do when you find out? Where do you go? Um, what if your loved one is out of control? What if they're threatening bodily harm? What if they're threatening suicide? What do you do? And a lot of times we just don't come armed with those things. We don't know what to do. And a lot of people would just call 911, which is totally okay. So I'm going to cover just a few of these. And again, like I always do, I covered them through my own experience, what I went through, not just speaking out of my hat, so to speak here, but actually what we went through. So obviously some of the initial, let's say your loved one is having a manic episode or is going through psychosis, as something has triggered them and they're behaving irrationally. Like I told you, one of my experiences, one of the many, was New Year's Eve. We were having a party with my parents. My daughter she seemed okay, but something happened during that evening that triggered her. Uh, and she went upstairs and opened up. And again, this is in, late December, early January, opened up the window and started throwing all of her clothes out onto the lawn. And something had triggered her and she was really behaving irrationally. Of course, my family was there, my mother and father and a couple of my siblings, and they had never seen her like this. And so it was a real trip for them. They had never understood what it's like to be in the room with somebody who's manic or somebody who is going through psychosis or having hallucinations or whatever you want to call it. So it's pretty traumatic. And, what do you do? What are we supposed to do? And so a lot of people say, well, I just call 911. Okay, that can be an option, and definitely you should if things are to a point where you just don't know what to do. That's always a an option. The ER, you can physically take them to the ER, and we've done both of these things. We called 911 and had okay results, but I want to talk a little bit about 911, about calling the police if somebody's threatening you. I kind of go through just again my experiences and things that I've learned over the years. So um, the ER is a good option. Um, but again, many ERs are not equipped to really handle some deep mental issues. And so, um, one time my wife and I actually, I'll speak for my wife because I was on a business trip. Uh, my loved one had a triggering event, was in full psychosis, as we later found out. Uh, my wife managed to get her in the car, and my other daughter was sitting in the back seat with her. And as they drove to the hospital, and again, we had to find a hospital, number one, that had space in the behavioral unit, number two, that our insurance would take, and number three, that even had behavioral health as an option. Well, on the way to the hospital, it was about a 20-minute drive from our house to get to this particular hospital. Um, my daughter was in full mania, full psychosis, and she was kicking the back door, kicking the window, nearly kicked the window out of the car. Um, she was looking up at lampposts saying she saw the Virgin Mary. I mean, there was all kinds of things that were happening. When we finally got her to the hospital, she wouldn't get out. She absolutely refused to get out, and she mustered up some energy and some strength that my wife could not literally but physically pull her out. She was kicking, violent, would not get out. Um, so the hospital obviously couldn't come out. They said, we can't extract her out of your car. If she can't come in willingly, we're not allowed to do that. And so there we were, there they were, I should say, in kind of this standoff, right? And what we found out was that there's this thing called pink sheeting, and that's SHEET, pink sheeting, uh, that essentially is literally a pink piece of paper that you fill out that allows police to come. In this case, they came right to the hospital. The car was parked under the little canopy, and the police came to the hospital. And because she represented a threat to herself or other people, and that's kind of the criteria they use for the pink sheet, the police were able to intervene and extricate her from the car. And I should use the word force, but they did. They put her on the gurney. They were able to get her into the hospital, into the emergency room, and get and start her treatment. So again, that's just one situation where you may have to do that. Where if they are literally in danger of hurting you, your loved one, themselves, you can get the police to intervene and force them to be hospitalized. You can't just drive up and say, get in there, or have the hospital come out and do it. They won't do it. If they do, good luck. But that's been my experience that they won't do it. So that's one option, the pink sheet. The other one is if you're home and let's say your loved one is threatening you, which happens, uh, you could just call the police, just the standard 911. Well, here's the problem. They send police out and I love the police. I'm blue stripe flag. I'm all for it, right? Um, the problem is a lot of the police that come aren't equipped or trained to deal with mentally ill people. And they come to diffuse the situation. They come to try to calm things down. So the easiest way is to, take your loved one, put handcuffs on them and, take them away. And that often is not the best solution, right? That often just exacerbates the problem. And so one thing I want you to understand is some of you may have heard about this already, but I know that, in fact, the last data that I looked at was 2,700 cities across the U.S. has what they call a crisis intervention team or a CIT officer. Now, I became familiar with this here in Utah. I helped train a lot of the CIT officers here in central Utah. And that training essentially involves putting the police officers in situations where they have to make a decision. So there was a lot of role plays. I know the role play that I was in was that I had a knife and I was threatening my wife and I was delusional, and they had to come in and try to defuse the situation without shooting me. And they were being trained, obviously. So they have to go through a lot of these scenarios to try to understand that dealing with a mentally ill person is not just a matter of going and slapping the cuffs on them. And it was interesting during that training that I was doing. And you got to understand, a lot of these police officers are doing it on their own time. I mean, they're volunteering for this training, and I have massive respect for them. But it was kind of interesting when we were having lunch during this training, and I was sitting with some of the officers that I had been working with, and I told them my story. I told them what it was like dealing with mental illness in my home and some of the situations we had run into, and how despondent I was, how hard it was for a caregiver to see your loved one go through this. And there were some tears in their eyes, and they said, "My gosh, we never understood it from your point of view because we just come in and, have to try to diffuse, but we don't understand the other side of it." So, hats off to the CIT officers. But the reason I bring this up is because if you do run into a situation like that and you call the police or call 911, tell them, send a CIT officer. They are trained to deal with mentally ill people. And sometimes putting the handcuffs on them isn't the best solution, right? And they are trained specifically to do that. And so highly recommend that. They may still get, taken to jail, and that does happen, but at least you would get an officer that was specifically trained to deal with that. The other thing is, and this is especially true for loved ones who are suicidal, who, are again threatening, or maybe even for yourself, if you just have had it and you don't know how to deal with it, or your spouse is abusive or doing something uh, that is unusual and you need to try to figure it out. The national crisis line is 988. And that is a number that is just a blanket number for crisis intervention, for mental illness, for suicide, even just for you, the caregiver. Help me. I need to find resources. They can help with all of that. That's why it exists. Again, 988 is the number you would need to call for that. And I've used it a few times just to, what do I do? Who do I call? And they can really help a lot with that. So again, just to review, we talked about pink sheeting, which I've only had to do one time, but it was really valuable. Um, Driving them to the ER yourself, you may be able to convince them to go in and get the treatment. You may not, and that's where you might have to pink sheet them to get them in. The CIT officers, which I talked about, is a great solution. You can actually, call your local police department and find out if they have CIT officers. And I can tell you if they don't, this is where you might call your local or contact your local NAMI branch in your state or wherever you live and find out if there's some training available for your police departments. As I said, I live here in Utah. I know in Utah we have a large network of CIT officers because I've trained them a lot, so I can verify that. But definitely something to look into. And as you start getting a little more involved, a little more active, I think you'll find that these are things that can not just help you, but help other people. So not easy, right? None of this is easy. And it's not easy, especially if your loved one has to go to jail. Uh, it's not easy. No, I am going to vouch and verify that I have never had to take my daughter to jail. But I have dealt with a lot of people over the years in the workshops that I do who have had experiences where their loved one had to go to jail. And, I'm not going to rat anybody out, but I'm just going to tell you that mental health treatment in jails is hit and miss. It can be good, it can be not so good. Um, they may not get the help they truly need. Uh, but what it really comes down to, and hopefully you're kind of understanding this, is as a loved one of the things that I just, put on my bucket list, I became educated. Don't just listen to a doctor, don't just listen to a therapist, become educated, research medications, research treatments, be a definite part of your loved one's treatment plan. Sit in the appointments with them. Um, I can't tell you. I mean, I think I told you a couple of videos ago that my daughter needs lithium. That's really necessary for her. And when we would sit in the appointment and the doctor would try to take the lithium away, we would have to intervene and say, no, 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 you can't do that. And so you have a lot of information. You live with this person likely. And so you notice things and you see when a drug has a negative reaction or, they've responded a different way. And the doctors need to know that. And that's why you need to educate yourself. You need to become part of the treatment plan. And this also comes back, something I'll probably deal with next time is what happens when you have a loved one who won't cooperate, who won't take their medication. And there are great books out there. I'll introduce one to you next week uh, called "I'm Not Sick and I Don't Need Help." But there's this thing that NAMI goes through all the time about empathy, and you need to become engaged with your loved one's treatment, and it really helps them when they see you taking a genuine interest in their mental health, in their treatment, in everything they're doing, becoming their advocate. And it kind of comes back to what I was talking about last week about getting the durable power of attorney. If you are part of it and you show that love to them, instead of just being this, top down, do this, do this, do this, but hey, let's do this together. I empathize with you. I'm here to help you. Have it more out of love instead of, I'm just going to force this pill down your throat or I'm going to force you into that treatment. Um, it's not easy. Living with somebody who has mental illness, it's not easy. As I told you in the first video, nobody asks for this, right? And so these are just some ideas. Like I said, become empathetic, become part of the treatment plan. And as I said, if you do have to get emergency services involved, those are some options. And I can tell you that, when my daughter's been in full psychosis, I literally had to drag her down the stairs, load her into the car, take her to the hospital. I had a situation here in Utah where she had been to so many mental health facilities um, that they finally told me, "Hey, we don't know what to do. We can't help her, so don't bring her back here." And here in Utah, one of, if not the best, mental health facility is the Huntsman Mental Health Facility at the University of Utah in Salt Lake City. And that's, through trial and error, that's what we had to do. And, just pull her out, load her in the car, try to keep her calm, try to keep her from kicking the windows out of the car, and take her up. In our case, it's about a 45-mile drive to the hospital to admit her. So, um, hang in there. There are people out there, like I said, the 988 number. You can even contact your local NAMI affiliate. They likely have a helpline that you can contact. Those are also very, very helpful. Uh, but um, hang in there. These resources are there, they're available to you. And I think I told you this last time. As you're going through this, don't be so consumed thinking that you're going to cure it. Okay. There are doctors, there are hospitals, there are people out there that don't know how, there are professionals that don't know how to cure it. And it's likely that you're not going to be able to figure that out either. In fact, I was doing one of my family to family sessions at NAMI, and this gentleman had signed up for the class, and he got really frustrated because he said, and I'm paraphrasing, but he got frustrated because he said, I came here to figure out how to fix this, and you're not helping me. And because I was saying, sometimes you can't fix it. You just have to learn to work with it, right? And he got really frustrated because he was a fixer and he thought I was kind of copping out because I wasn't giving him the magic pill or the magic thing to do. And it is frustrating. It is frustrating, especially when people come in with that kind of an attitude. So calm down. It will get better. You will find treatment. There is a lot more research going on than when I first started with it. And there are some things out there that can definitely help you. So become educated, research it, get to know your CIT officers if that's what you need. Look at the pink sheet as an option. You can Google it, it shows up. Um, And remember, those are options that you can use. I'll also tell you in closing that, at least in my situation, once we got my daughter in the ER, um, she had to qualify to get into the behavioral health unit. Many of the behavioral health units are very, very limited on bed space. The one that I mentioned at the U of U, very limited on bed space, and they will qualify you to make sure that, you know, that they can help you. And in one situation, my daughter was in the ER, restrained on the bed. And before we could even take her to the mental health unit or the behavioral health unit, she had to get on a video call with, I can't remember who it was, but it was, might have been from the insurance. It might have been somebody else. But they had to basically interview her and find out if she qualified to be in the behavioral health unit. And the sad part was, is we knew she did. We lived with her, but you know, you got to jump through the hoops. You got to qualify, and it's hard. We had to leave the room and shut the door. And here's my daughter in full psychosis trying to answer questions. I remember one in particular. They asked her what her gender was, and we could hear through the door. And she goes, "It's whatever you want it to be." And but these are the things the bridges they have to cross, right? The questions they have to ask to make it legit. But so hopefully you don't run into too much trouble getting your loved one admitted if they have to be, but just understand it's not just a matter of walking them in and dropping them off. There's some qualifications that have to happen, and call the hospital ahead of time before you even take her there or them, because they may not have that space for them. And as I said, in our case, it was $1,000 ambulance ride to get my loved one to a facility that actually had bed space. So, well, I appreciate you guys listening. It's been great watching the channel grow, not as fast as watching, kittens jump around, but hopefully this is helpful. Please comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know if you have any questions. And do subscribe, hit the like, and recommend this to your friends or anybody else that you see or that you know that might benefit from this. So again, Jeff Olson, thanking you for supporting me on this. And, let me just, give you a big, big virtual hug. It's tough. We're all in it together. And you have a network of loved ones and friends that will help you. If nobody else, you have me. So I appreciate it. Hang in there, and we'll see you next time.